You've been listening to the True Idaho News Podcast. Unfiltered news and opinion for the citizens of Idaho. Get more true news by visiting trueidahonews.com. If you'd like to support this podcast, visit trueidahonews.com/support. Thanks for listening.
Good morning, Shane Class here with Dr. Daniel Bobinski on True Idaho News. How are you doing this morning, sir?
I am breathing. I am well. How are you?
I woke up this morning
man.
without a chalk line around my body, so anytime that happens, it's a good day.
I too need to take a moment just to say congratulations on your marriage. Awesome.
Oh, thank you very much, sir. I could not have been a more beautiful day. What Rhonda and I keep commenting on that it was just a gorgeous day. It was just slightly overcast, so nobody was getting burned, and we had plenty of shade out at my sister's property where we had the wedding, and it was just we wouldn't have changed anything. So it just turned out absolutely beautiful.
Cool.
So, oh boy, there's been a lot going on. We're going to do a wonderful little thing this morning that we like to, you and I kind of brainstormed this one up. In fact, I think you came up with the title of it. Little headline hit and run, where we're just going to go through some of the big headlines that have been out and just talk about there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on around the world. There's a lot going on in Idaho. So there's a lot of headlines today. So we decided rather than have just one topic, we'd talk about a little bit of everything. And I don't know, where do we want to start? I imagine, how about we just start right here, kick it off. So this is a U.S. Colonel's take on the war that's coming. Let's just go ahead and play it. And
the problem is this, and this is most important, Cyrus. If you're President Trump, you sit down with your political advisors, whomever he's talking to these days, probably Lutnick and Witkoff, who are both fervent Zionists, and he says, well, how many senators do I control in a crucial vote in the Senate? And how many senators does Mr. Netanyahu control in a crucial vote in the Senate? Answer, Mr. Netanyahu controls more of the Senate than Donald Trump.
Wow.
That's probably also true for the House. That's why Washington is this fantasy island. Everybody who lives there is stuffing their pockets full of cash that they get from various lobbies and kickbacks because of their support for military equipment going all over the world or the commitment of U.S. forces somewhere. Donald Trump doesn't seem to have any control over any of it.
Let's stop there. There's some interesting points that he makes with Colonel McGregor. He talks about kickbacks. And one of the things that I read about that was really, we take a look at the Epstein files and the rumored link between the Epstein operation and the Mossad, that most likely the reason that they are following what Israel might be telling them, the AIPAC lobby, would be because of the tapes and the blackmail that goes on. That is interesting, but I do find it interesting. I don't think he's wrong that the president does not have as much influence in the Senate as some of these foreign lobbies.
Well, I mean, we've seen that. That's just been historically in the United States, and that is really the problem. It's, this goes back to the argument about term limits, and that we desperately need term limits because we get people that are in there, and it doesn't take long to get corrupted. And they'll just keep beating you down until they find something on you. And when they find something on you, they own you. And then when they own you, they put the money behind you to keep you in there. And I don't think that's any question that that's what's happening.
And so I actually remember reading an article from a female legislator. She got elected. She got visited in her office, and they said, okay, tell us what dirt we need to know about you. And she kind of thought it was a joke. And they said, no, we need to know what dirt you have that we can we can put in our files. And she goes, I don't have any dirt. I'm not going to, why would I even tell you? And they told her that if you do not supply us with something that we can hold over you, we will make something up.
Oh my gosh.
And spread it in the news as true. And she goes, well, have fun with that. Well, the problem was they did. She didn't vote the way that they wanted her to. And so they made up a story and they smeared her. And she tells how she had to spend millions of dollars in defense lawyers to defend the case. So yeah, the place there in Washington, D.C. is corrupt beyond corrupt.
It stinks worse than the town itself. I don't know if you've ever driven into D.C. We covered, when I had Shane Talks Politics, we followed the convoy that went down to D.C. and covered that. And as soon as you roll in, the entire town just smells of marijuana. So,
really?
Yeah,
it's been 40 years since I've been there. So.
Yeah, it's just been a few years. When you first roll in there, we had the windows down, and we're rolling in, and you could just smell it. And
wow.
And so, yeah, so I say it kind of smells about as high as the town is. And so, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with Israel and what's going on over there right now, and the control that not anti-Israel. I'm very much on the side of Israel, but there is no question that they do have a lot of control over our congressmen.
Yeah,
and congressmen.
There's a lot of corruption. I mean, I have these conversations with people, and I listen to other conversations with people, and they talk about how it's all what was it? The Jews. Everything is the Jews. The Jews. All the problems are because of the Jews. It's like, stop painting with such a broad brush. If you were another country outside of the United States, you could just as easily look at what's happening in the world and say, it's America, it's America, it's America.
It's Americans, it's Americans, it's all Americans. All Americans are corrupt. All Americans are terrible. All Americans want to do whatever it is, cherry pick your headline and then call all Americans bad.
And it's not because all Americans are bad. It's because we got some really bad players, some, like, as you just mentioned, major league corruption. And so that's the problem. That's the problem. And I look at the scripture and I say, look, if you want to paint with a broad brush, go back and read the books of 1st and 2nd Kings in the Bible, the stories of all the history of the kings. There's so much corruption.
Oh, boy.
There's so many more bad kings than there are good kings. And so if you're going to take a look at, is it the Jews that are the problem? Okay, guess what? People are the problem because people are sinful. Hello. So the nation of Israel is still God's people, and no, replacement theology is a false doctrine. When we get down to it and God does take the church, then he's going to be refocusing on the nation of Israel. And all you need to do is go study Hosea chapter 5, verse 15. We can talk about that another time, but for those who want to look it up and see what's really going on, read about the prophecy in Hosea chapter 5, verse 15.
Very much, and Israel's got their Mossad, their version of the CIA, if you will,
right?
And everybody says, well, they got people in America. Well, guess what? Our CIA has people in Israel, and not just Israel, and Iran, and everywhere else. And
everywhere.
You and I were talking just a little bit last night, texting back and forth, and I made that. Here's my big tinfoil cap conspiracy theory, if you will. The CIA is influencing what's happening in Iran and happening in Israel. And this is just my own conspiracy theory. I don't have evidence of this other than the CIA has been active in Iran for decades, all the way back in the 50s. But I believe that they're active on both sides, that they are playing both sides against each other, that they are fueling this conflict and what's going on, because we are coming up in an election cycle at the midterms. And they want to hinder MAGA because President Trump's coming after him.
I think that, Shane, is the best analysis I've heard in the past several weeks with all this. That's, I think, tremendous insight. We would not even have an Islamic regime in Iran if the CIA had kept their nose out of it, because they kept trying to bring about their version of regime change and it backfired on them. So I mean, I don't want to take the time to go into the history, and this isn't supposed to be headline hit and run, but yeah, I think you're spot on with that analysis.
Okay, next headline. Here we go. New civil war on the horizon, and soon confirms huge number of Americans. I think this is one that you sent over. It says millions of Americans believe that a civil war within the next 10 years is very likely. What are your thoughts?
Well, when you read the articles, 30% of Americans are either in firm belief or believe it's very, very likely that we're going to be experiencing a civil war in this country in the next 10 years. Frankly, I've been kind of leaning that direction for about 10 years myself, watching what's been going on. So it's like, okay, I guess I'm part of that percent. But I think it's going to be a difficult one because in the previous Civil War, there was physical boundaries. It was easy to draw a line, and you don't have that today. You have people who are on opposing sides living right across the street from each other.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a very difficult, unique Civil War if we have one.
Well, I think we have. I think when you start looking at your truckers out there that ship supplies from all across the United States, the vast majority of them. Well, I don't know. I've seen a lot of them that. Can I say towel heads that are on their heads these days? I mean, I don't.
Your show, dude.
I mean, that's you see a lot of those. So maybe I'm wrong about this currently, but historically, truckers have been right leaning. And I've got just a real easy solution to that. If we go into civil war, just surround all the major cities, all the transportation going in and out. Don't let any supplies in. When they start running out of them, they start getting hungry. Then you can just watch the gangsters. They're going to start rising up and saying, "Hold on, guys, we got to put an end to what's going on down here," and just let them fight it out themselves. And pretty soon the problem will take care of itself because it's all the big cities that are on the left that give them the power that they have in America. So.
Oh, big time. Yeah. So. If it wasn't for the cities, we'd have nothing but conservative legislators across the country. Yep. But what you're talking about here is the act of throwing lead at each other at rapid speed. So that's the part that no one's looking forward to. We have a lot of in your face, and it's getting more brash and more bold. But when the lead starts flying, that's going to be when it's really damaging.
And I tell you, when you see what just happened over with this No Kings, more people showed up in Boise than I anticipated would on their side. When you take a look at the pictures there and how many there were a lot that were there at that No Kings rally there. So, and that's here in Idaho and all across the United States. And obviously I think we have a headline on this. It turned deadly. In certain areas across the United States. And that is, that just shows exactly how divided it's getting and how more emboldened the left is getting. And they're willing to come out and obviously block the streets, burn cities down, and they're just and stand outside with their signs. Of course, they're funded. They're very well funded from Soros and from the Walmart, what's her name? The gal that got the Walton, they got all the money. So I mean,
by the way, just for point of clarification, her name is Walton. She is an heiress. She doesn't have to work
heiress
in her life.
Was the word I was trying to spit out.
She's worth billions of dollars, but Walmart came out and made a statement that says she is not involved in the operation of our company. Yeah, she's just a benefactor for the money. I mean, so
wasn't I think it was wasn't her husband was the actual bloodline, and he died leaving her the heiress. So I think that's how. Don't quote me on that. I believe I was looking that up a little bit and just kind of seeing a little bit more about who she was, and that's what I thought.
I'm going to go back to what you said, sir, with the CIA. I think the CIA is involved in all this stuff too, stirring up the pot, trying to bring the dissension. I think the CIA would like to see this country fall, which seems kind of counterintuitive because they operate because of us, but that just tells us their funding comes from not us.
That's exactly right. And that is really the problem. The problem I fully believe, and most of what we're going to talk about, most of the headlines, I believe are starting. It all comes back to the CIA, and we have to clean up what just need to do away with them. They're too corrupt to do anything, but they've gotten so big and so powerful around the world. It then becomes the question is, okay, so we decide that we want to be done with them. Can we ever?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Even if that order was given and we stopped funding them, I think they have infiltrated the world so deeply, and they've learned how to get their own money that I don't know that we could get rid of them.
That, my friend, is a topic for a show all by itself.
Let's move on to the next headline on that note. Here we go. So right back there, this was kind of a funny little meme, but not really so funny, is it? It says Iraq has WMDs, Iran has WMDs.
So there's so it's W. Bush. That's going back to what, 25 years.
Yep.
And here's Trump saying the same thing.
Hey, I've seen this one. Yeah.
I think Trump's between a rock and a hard place on this. I really don't think he wants a war.
I don't think he does either.
It's interesting. I remember, 5 years ago now, I came downstairs and my wife just had this look on her face. And I said, "What's going on?" And she goes, "It's like God just gave me a spiritual download. Trump has been, what was the word she used? Oh, gosh. I don't want to say corrupted. That's not the right word, but he was, the word, I'll think of it. But basically, he basically, someone has stuff on him, or they showed him the Zapruder film or something.
Oh, yeah.
But he's, and against his natural will, he's got a heart of gold. But against his will, he's having to play the game of the CIA and the deep state.
You know, on one hand, that could be the possibility, but I tend to think that, like, I kind of went back, that the CIA is intentionally meddling in Iran and meddling in Israel and causing this and putting him intentionally between a rock and a hard place. I don't think he wants a war. I don't think he ever wanted. I think he really truly is a America first and get us out of all of this, these global conflicts that are really wars without a title. But I think that it'd kind of be like saying, okay, no new wars. We're not going to go to war anymore. And then something happening around the nation where they just started killing American citizens in another country. You would have no choice but to get involved at that point. And I believe that they know that. And so then it makes him look like he lied. Well, you know what? If he says no new wars and that situation arose, I would expect him to go to war to defend America. So I think they're putting him intentionally in this spot so that can become the headlines, and they can show over and over again that he said no new wars, but yet look where we're at, just to make it difficult for him. And so, because we are in an election cycle, and I don't know what I would do if I was Trump right now. On one hand, Israel is our ally. On the other hand, we don't want to be involved in world policing, but then on the other hand, who wants a nuclear Iran? That's a bad situation.
It is difficult, but going back to the casualties of Americans, I've been actually concerned about the false flags.
Yeah,
we now know that the Roosevelt administration knew that Japan was going to be attacking Pearl Harbor, and he allowed it because he wanted us in the war. We know that the Gulf of Tonkin incident never even happened. It was a manufactured press story so that Johnson could get us into Vietnam. They were going to the whole Bay of Pigs with President Kennedy. The CIA wanted to blow up an American ship and blame it on Cuba to draw us into a war. This is my concern for right now, that if someone plants a suitcase nuke inside America, if the CIA does it and kills Americans and makes it look like Iran did it, that's going to draw us into a war. This is my concern because, like, as you just said, all it's going to take is some Americans to be killed by a foreign entity, whether it's an actual or a false flag, and Trump's not going to have any choice.
Yeah, no, it's Huckabee that's over that. I mean, that's his comments were that he supports the president and whatever he does, but he has no intention of leaving. And I mean, we have Americans that are all over in the middle of that could be injured, and it'd be very easy for it to happen. I mean, let's put on the tinfoil caps and go back to 9/11. And what is our government willing to do in order to keep the military industrial complex flooded with money? And what would Lindsey Graham be willing to do?
Don't get me started with him.
Yeah, I mean, he's been over in Ukraine and making comments about that would draw us into it.
Him and John McCain were tied at the hip, and they were doing all sorts of things overseas. I have zero trust in that man.
Less than zero. Let's see. Oh, here we go. So Thomas Massey, speaking of which, Thomas Massey. I just introduced an Iran war powers resolution with Rep. Khanna to prohibit U.S. involvement in the Israel-Iran war. This is not a war. Even if it were, Congress must decide such matters according to our Constitution. So that becomes another good point. Should Trump get us in? I mean, should Congress get us in? Should Congress keep us out? What do you think?
It goes right back to what we were just discussing. Is if something happens to Americans somewhere, then Trump actually has a responsibility to respond in some capacity. I mean, he could have let it slide, but as you point out, it's going to be used against him. So Massey's introducing legislation that says, no, we're not going to go into anybody else's war. Congress has to authorize war. Well, that's been the Constitution. Congress is supposed to authorize war. Yep. We've had all these, and the whole Gulf of Tonkin issue, like I said, it was manufactured. And the very next day, Johnson, and the newspapers were making a big deal out of it, and Johnson's trying to rally the Congress and both houses. They had this big thing. It was like almost unanimous. We're going to go into war with Vietnam. It was all fake. It was all fake. So here's Massey trying to keep us out of somebody else's war, to say, no, Trump can't take us in. The problem with this, and I read that article, the problem with this is that his co-sponsors on the bill are the leftist Democrats who don't want America messing with Iran. Okay, that's the problem.
Yep.
So to me, this is an issue that we've had in this country for a long time. My wife calls it team mentality, right? The 17th Amendment trashed it for us 100 plus years ago, that our senators are no longer elected by our state representatives.
Amen.
They're elected by popular vote. So now we've got dark money coming in, and so the problem. So now they're no longer representing the states as designed by the Constitution. They're representing big money interests. So Thomas Massey, and that what that does. My point is that we no longer have bills being voted on for the content of the bills. We have bills being voted on because a Democrat brought it up or a Republican brought it up, and that's that's who's going to support the bill. It's all team mentality.
Yep. And you have the
point is, I happen to agree that we should not be going into war. Dan Knight here in Idaho, he's trying to get the Idaho legislature to pass a bill that I think it's called Protect the Guard, and it's so that we cannot send Idaho National Guardsmen into foreign wars that are not declared by Congress.
That's right.
That is a constitutional bill. I've gone down to the State House and testified on behalf of that legislation for Dan Knight's organization. Why our legislators won't pass it? He brings it up every year, and they just keep sitting on it. I don't know why. Why are we sending our men and women into combat in undeclared wars? That's, I think, a huge problem, and I think a problem that Thomas Massey is trying to address here.
Yep.
Unfortunately, team politics being what it is, he's being labeled as, anti-American, blah, 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 by people who don't see the big picture.
Well, and I agree 100%. And I do agree. I like this. I think Congress needs to be the one who decides if we go into this. And this is Trump's out. This is really Trump's out in all of this, is just to say, I don't want to see a nuclear Iran. I think that is an absolute risk to the world. At the same time, we shouldn't be out there policing the world. And this is not my decision to make. I'm going to leave this up to Congress to decide what we're going to do here and kick it over to them. And unfortunately, before a president can use the military, we have to be attacked. And then he could, that's my understanding, he could send in troops at that point in time, and wait and see if Americans get harmed. freedom's scary. And you have to wait until there's actually it is the process. That process that is there for a purpose. And there are some that say, well, we can't allow Americans to get harmed. Well, before the president can make that decision, we do. Constitutionally speaking, and the right way, and leave it, and he just kicks it back over to Congress and gets out of it. And that takes care of the CIA can keep trying to do what they're doing behind the scenes. And if people are upset with what Congress decides to do, we are in a midterm, and I think that would be shine the most light on who the corrupt players are, is just to let Congress decide this one. So,
well, let's go back to the very first thing you played, and that is, how much influence does Israel Mossad have over the senators and the House of Representatives in this country, and the media in this country, for that matter?
mm-hmm.
So, again, don't be cautious. Don't paint with a broad brush. We have to be praying for the peace of Jerusalem, and the Bible is very clear. God said, "I will bless those who bless thee. I will curse those who curse thee. Curse those who curse thee. Do not be cursing Israel."
Mm-hmm.
We can. In fact, we're not even supposed to curse anymore. We're supposed to bless those that curse us and do evil toward us. That's even further on our Christian list of to-dos, right? But when you take a look at what Trump was up against, and I again bring up the false flag operation, you just mentioned the CIA, I think we're between a rock and a hard place, and people should buckle up and get right with God.
Amen. And just to that point, we can be on the side of Israel. It'd be if you have a best friend that gets in a fight with somebody else, you can be on your best friend's side without actually jumping in and taking on the fight for him. You stand there and cheer him on, and at some point. But anyhow, next headline. We're beating that dog to death. Here we go. This is in Idaho. This was a post by Casey. I'm going to bring this up a little bit bigger. Hopefully I can get this big enough for you to read it. I'll just go ahead and read it. These are statements today by Rep. Cornell Razor and Jennifer Meyer, who pled guilty to second-degree arson. This has to do with the arson of the Army surplus one store in northern Idaho, owned by Rep. Cornell Razor, and the ruling that happened. And I'm just going to play this little clip. This came right out of the sentencing.
So thank you, Honorable Judge. The actions of Jennifer Meyer and her arson of our store have greatly affected our lives. The Army surplus was our only livelihood. The business was actually a home away.
Yeah, looks like we're having a little bit of internet issues here.
From our home. We raised our children and taught them the retail business over the 43 years that we were open. Our grandchildren became our employees. Seeing our livelihood burned to the ground has left an emotional effect on all of us as family. We were in the middle of building our home, and all of our personal possessions were stored there. Furniture and household items were destroyed. My wife's parents had recently passed away, and her entire inheritance was burned. I lost wages from July, including all the way to today, because the business is not back up and running enough for me to take a wage at this point. The entire inventory that we had built up over the years was disintegrated. The equipment it takes to run a store, from hangers to shelving to pegboards, are all gone. We cannot be made completely whole, as the insurance money was not enough to recoup everything. As I mentioned earlier, the store had become a focal point for our family. Not only did we use the warehouse for storage, my wife taught an art class there once a week. All of the students' work was lost, including her artwork. She's a professional artist, a world-class professional artist, and everything that she had done over the years is all gone. Many family possessions that had very little monetary value but immense sentimental value are now gone and not replaceable. Besides the material goods, Jennifer's crime has affected us in multiple ways. I've lost sleep worrying about how I might provide for the family, how we can make the business profitable again. So now that we are left with the financial work and burden of building a new business, we want to encourage the court that the sentencing and restitution be strict enough that she not do this again. Finally, it is my desire that she hear and respond to the gospel of Jesus Christ, because her eternal soul is worth far more than what was destroyed. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. And if you could please, state.
Okay, let me see if I can get that.
Cornell Razor, C-O-R-N-E.
You're having a
Technical difficulties.
yeah, a little technical diff. I can't even get it to turn off now. So let me see if
this is what we get with live TV.
This is what you have when you're on live. Yes. Let me see if there. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think I finally got that one closed. I had a lot of windows open because we have a lot of topics, and I think my computer is over here that's screaming for relief. But I think we got through that. Before seeing that, I didn't realize just exactly how intense the damage was and the losses were to our representative from Northern Idaho. And he lost absolutely everything, he and his family, in that. And she was sentenced to 15 years with 8 of it that she won't be able to get out of. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, hats off to Casey Whalen for posting that. He's very active up in Northern Idaho and capturing news and putting that up. The as you just said, though, I had no idea. We're down here in Southern Idaho. It's a very large state, and we don't talk to a lot of newsmakers and what's happening up in Northern Idaho. But I heard that his store was burned down. The implication that many rumored people had was that this woman who did the burning, it was a political reason, because Cornell's not exactly a leftist guy. He is very conservative. So what you have is the rumor mill going. But it turns out in the trial, no motive was apparently discussed.
Yeah.
She did try to go with a mental health issue. And that was, she tried to get out of the trial for that. And they said, no, she's competent to stand trial. So they did. What's interesting is the judge said that I see no remorse in her. So who knows what the issue is. But as you said, I mean, I watched that same thing from Cornell, and I'm like, wow. We had down here in Southern Idaho had no clue. It wasn't reported that widely. Had no clue that he lost all of his belongings, the contents of his house, his wife's work, her inheritance. There's so much that can be stored in a warehouse. I mean, when I was about a wee child, my father was a police officer in Chicago for 28 years. He gave somebody a ticket for a loud muffler. The gentleman decided, this was back in the 1960s, and he decided that he didn't like that. He came to our house, doused with 2 friends, doused our garage with gasoline, and I woke up. My parents woke me up because our garage was completely burned to the ground. Everything. I remember the big. I was just small, but I remember all those big flames, and you lose everything. I remember looking in the burned structure and seeing all my toys and my bicycles and stuff. Everything's burned, and the impact that it has on you emotionally. And I can't imagine. That's when you're a small child, right? I can't imagine your whole family's everything being destroyed. It's just heartbreaking.
That's part of the reason that I wanted to shine a light on this particular article when I saw that come across, because I one step in my life, my biological father had a fire alarm business, and many of you have probably been to one of the dinners. They would come and invite about 50 people to a free dinner somewhere, and show a 20-minute film on fire safety, scare the heck out of everybody about fire, and then show their fire alarms at the end and get appointments to go out and sell fire alarms. But while doing that, it was in my younger life, but while doing that, we were doing those fire safety programs, and then we would bring up headlines and we would talk to people, and then the people that were in the audience that would show up there would tell you stories about how they got burned out and they lost everything. And for those up in Northern Idaho that are watching this, or even across the state, anybody who's watching this for that matter, this family needs to be wrapped in prayer, and they also need to be wrapped in gifts. We need to help them out as much as we can as just fellow citizens in Idaho, because it is devastating, and the insurance is not even going to touch a fraction of what they have lost in that family, with clothing and just financially, anything that we can do. He's a conservative, and it wouldn't matter if he was a conservative or not. But with this being a conservative show, we need to support each other, and we're hoping that they get the help that they need to get through this. So it's a terrible thing that happens. And speaking of mental health, another little headline that came up this last week down here in Twin Falls. we have the Prime Bridge, which sits 486 feet above the river and is often the way. Now, I don't know if this is what happened here or not, but it's often the way that people decide to end their life is to take a dive off of that bridge. And a pickup truck with one person in it went off of the viewpoint there and tumbled down, and a 50 some odd year old individual died as a result of that. I had friends that were down there on the water that watched this happen real time. They kayak down there. It's a popular, you put in just above that, and then you can paddle all the way up to the there's a falls, and then people come back. So it's a popular kayaking area. You might, at any given day, you might have 50 to 100 people down there. And so a lot of people witnessed this happen. It's another, just an indicator of where we are as a nation right now. People are under a lot of stress. People are under a lot of turmoil. And I don't know if that is the reason that this happened. They're still investigating it. But it does highlight the mental health issues, and we're seeing more and more of them. Have you noticed that? I mean, it's terrible.
Well, there's a lot of stress in the nation, I think, across the world right now. And I don't think it's just political. I think it's spiritual in many aspects. And so as a believer myself in the Bible, I tell people, the scripture is pretty clear that no temptation has seized you except that which is common to man, but God's faithful. He's going to, when you are tempted, he's going to provide a way out so you can stand up under it. And so you can include with that being tempted to take yourself out. You are here for a purpose. You are here for a purpose, and the enemy would love nothing more than to destroy that purpose. So I would just say when someone's feeling overwhelmed, and I've been there in my life, I'll go back 10, 15, well, about 20 years now, feeling very, very depressed. And it's a feeling of losing control, and then a feeling of lost control. So the anxiety attacks and things that can happen to somebody, it can become overwhelming. And sometimes medication is needed. There's some neurochemical pathways in the brain that is think of it this way, the way the doctor described it to me, I'm going back 20 years now, 25 years now, and now that I think about it, he says, you get depressed, and it's like your level in your tank goes down. There's a little switch at the bottom of the tank that recognizes that the level is low, and so it kicks in, it regenerates whatever chemical it needs so that you don't go down all the way. He says sometimes people are just there so much that it goes below the trigger point, and the kick-in gauge doesn't work, and so you stay there. And so sometimes you need a little medication to re-kick it back up. And so I was on a medication called Wellbutrin for about a month or two, just to kick it back up, and then I was fine after that. But
So
it
helped.
was really kind of weird the way he described it. So I just want to tell people, if you're feeling depressed, first of all, turn to the Lord, because he is always there 24/7, and he loves you more than anybody else. But if you really feel depressed and you're having anxiety attacks, go see a doctor. There's no shame in it.
No, and I think this is a good point with it. People are under stress with what's happening in Iran, and between Iran and Israel, and are we going to end up in war? People are stressed out about are we going to end up in a nuclear war? I mean, we just talked about that. The number of people that are concerned about that, and some people can get so fixated on these types of issues that are going on that it can lead them into depression. And they don't want to live through that, and get them freaked out. And we're in a time right now where it's so uncertain across America. And then you add on top of that what we're doing with our food and the endocrine disruptors, and what's happening in the LGBTQ community, and this push for trans people to get sex changes. All of these things that are going on right now. We're seeing suicide rates, and I just said the word, that's probably going to get me muted on some of the platforms for having done that. So if you ever see us dancing around the word, that's why. It's because the social media will rank you down if you use the word, which is terrible, because the fix is to talk about it. But anyhow, with that happening in America right now, that the cure, you hit it. The cure is we need to get back to Christ. We need to, and men and need to get back to their purpose. When you're not fulfilling your role, role that God created you to fulfill, which is men being the head of the household, that are being strong men, that are protecting their family, providing for their family, and actually staying with their families, staying in the marriage through the tough times instead of taking the easy way out. We're going to see this continue to happen, and we have to start asking ourselves as a community. We have to start asking ourselves as a nation, which road do we want to go down? Do we want to continue going down the leftist road that's just going to cause more turmoil and more death and destruction? Or do we want to go down the conservative path, which is to get our hearts right with God, get our country back right with God, and get men and women back into their proper roles so that they can feel like they are living a fulfilled life, and get and get the parents back in the home together so that the kids can have some stability. And raise
beyond
your
the
kids to be
stability
strong.
for the kids, it's just doing the work that the Lord prepared in advance for you to do.
That's right.
I mean, I tell people all the time, for years, my life's verse was Ephesians 2:8 and 9. For it's by grace you're saved through faith, not of works, so nobody can boast. In other words, there's nothing you can do to earn salvation. It's just believing what Jesus did on the cross. And then after a number of years, I got to reading the next verse, Ephesians 2:10, because you are God's workmanship, prepared what to do, and you're here to do the works that God prepared in advance for you to do. And the word workmanship in the Greek is poema. We get our English word poem from. And so I tell people, have you ever written a poem? Have you ever read a poem? You can tell that every line has serious thought put into it. There's a purpose. There's a couple of words, but there's so much thought into it. And that's what you are to God. God put so much thought into you and what he wants to use you with. You're not saved for your works. You're saved. I mean, you're not saved by your works. You're saved for your works. He brings you to a relationship with him so he can work through you to do good things. And this kind of ties back into the depression thing. When people get depressed, oftentimes they're focused on themselves and their situation. But when we look outside of ourselves and start helping others, that's something else that helps lift us out of the depression.
I have said this, and I see so many biblical principles that point to this. If you need something, maybe you're not giving it away. And it talks about if you want more friends, then you need to make yourself friendly. If you need more finances, perhaps you haven't been giving. If you need more happiness, perhaps you're putting out sadness into the world. And one of I've just said, it doesn't matter how bad of a day I'm having, when my phone rings and a customer calls, I have to put on a happy face. And amazingly enough, within 60 seconds, it might be just a 60-second telephone call, I can hang up that phone with the customer where I just had to force on a happy face and feel good. I feel better immediately. Within 60 seconds, my entire day can change by just one telephone call from a customer that forces me to get out of my funk. And and that's the same thing. I'm now putting happiness back out into the world, and it's reciprocated. So, I say this just over and over again. If there is something in your life that you feel like you're missing, maybe you haven't been giving enough of it yourself.
My mentor taught me that 35, 40 years ago. Give what you want to get.
Yep. And that's not prosperity doctrine. That is just a rule of the universe as God created it. And I think he created us that way, so that some people call it karma. I call it the rules of the universe that God put in place. And it just works that way. When you give something, you get it back. And I think that was to get us less self-centered and self-focused, and get us more community focused so that we can survive as a people. So that's my thoughts for the day on that.
Yes, sir.
Next headline. Here we go. We have, what did we put up? Oh, yeah. Let me give a little play on this little clip.
Dan.
I think I started that one at the back.
About Trump's military parade, which cost an estimated $25 million. But did you know that the equipment Biden left in Afghanistan cost over $7 billion. Now, to help put that into perspective, do you see that tiny little red sliver on the pie chart? That's the cost of Trump's military parade.
I think we could stop it right there. That gets the point across. Thoughts?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. The people were complaining about the price of the parade. I saw that the other day on social media. 7 point something billion dollars, and that does not even include. I saw that and I thought that doesn't even include the fact that 13 Americans lost their lives in that fiasco from Biden.
No, it does not. And what is the real cost of that? You know, it's misplaced outrage. This is what's happened in our country. It doesn't matter what it is. We are so focused on, well, if Biden did it, then it was a good thing. If Trump did it, it was a bad thing, and vice versa. If Trump did it, it's a good thing. If Biden did it, it was a bad thing. And we have taken sides on our political leaders rather than taking sides on the what's the word I'm looking for? More the point of what's going on. The principles. The principles. Thank you.
This is the team mentality we were talking about earlier.
Yep. It's herd mentality, and we really are like chickens being led to the slaughter.
Which is why, you talked earlier about the need to bring our country back to focus and relationship with God. And I say, okay, let's also stay focused on our circle of influence, our circle of where we have responsibility and we can make an influence, we have an impact. Because we can think about a lot of things over which we have no control. We're concerned about those things, but we don't have any influence over them or no control over them. We do have control over our intimate circle of family and friends, and that's where we should focus. And I think, as long as we're getting right with God, then we're going to be making an impact that ripple effects out. If we're expecting that ripple effect to happen out there and ripple effect into us, we're going to be waiting for a long time.
I think you're referring to a conversation we had quite a while back. It was a company I worked for spent $2,500 to send me to a program, and the biggest thing I came back with that is just understanding what your circle of influence versus your circle of what you can control. And in the middle of that circle were the things that I have control of. That's at the very center of it. And just outside that is the things that I can influence. I don't have control over them, but I can influence them. And then the wide open circle are the things I have neither control nor influence over. And interestingly enough, when you really boil it down, this is probably one of the most important lessons I've ever learned, is because I try to control things that I can't. What I have control of is my time and my attitude. That's it.
Can I give a little shameless self-promotion?
Yeah, have at it.
Because for 35 years, I've been an executive coach, corporate trainer, teaching teams how to play better together. And I wrote this book 16 years ago called Creating Passion-Driven Teams. It's got good reviews on Amazon. I teach classes on this. I teach one-on-one with people. I also teach with teams. And back when I was an adjunct professor at Idaho State, I taught people what we're just talking about here. And so when I do my team training, I also include content from Stephen Covey's book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which is what we're talking about here.
Wonderful book, by the way.
But yeah, so it's highly theoretical, but I put shoe leather on it when I teach it. But if you got a company out there and you've got teams that you want to work better together, or if you yourself want to learn better management leadership skills, you can feel free to reach out to me, because I've been doing it for 35 years and I got a nice long list of referrals. They'd be happy to give you glowing reviews.
And you and I have had a lot of conversations, and I will put my my own endorsement that Dr. Daniel Bobinski doesn't do anything that he has not given a lot of research and a lot of thought and a lot of training to, and that is his leadership. I rely on it a lot, just having the conversations with you, and I trust your judgment on things above some of my closest friends. I hate to say.
Well, so I should tell people, thank you, by the way. Thank you. I should tell people that if you want to find out more, they can go to the website, eqfactor.net. I don't know if you want to pull that up, but EQ Factor, EQ for emotional intelligence, EQ, eqfactor.net. And there's some information there on what we offer so that people can learn more if they want to hire me to help their business become more productive, effective, and profitable. That's what I've been doing with companies for 35 years now.
Phenomenal. Let's see. Here we go. Let's lighten the mood. I don't know if this is lightening the mood. I shouldn't say lightening the mood. It lightened my mood really quick, but here we go. Play silly games.
Win silly prizes. I am so glad to see. I'm sorry that people get hurt.
Yep.
But as you just said, if you play a silly game, you can expect to win a silly prize. Florida, several other states have already said, look, if you want to, somebody's trying to stop you, feel free to keep rolling.
Here's the sad thing about that. That was in LA. So the individual driving the car will probably be the one who gets in trouble rather than the one who was blocking traffic, stopping them from being able to go anywhere, and putting them at risk of the mob that was out there. You see these videos, the next thing that would happen inevitably would be a whole mob of people would gather around that car and start beating on it and tearing up their property. And the person who gets in trouble is the one who flees away from that mob on the roads that they have every right to travel on. And I applaud Florida for that, by the way. If you're in Florida and that happens, I cannot advise you legally, but I can tell you what I do. Hit the gas.
All you have to do is go back to the riots from the early 90s in LA and watch the videos of Reginald Denny getting his face smashed in with bricks, and you will hit the gas as well.
Amen.
When I was, I forget, it was in San Diego or Chicago. I forget which town I was in. I think it was San Diego. I was surrounded one time about 2:00 in the morning. There was nobody in front of me, thank God. But I was surrounded on both sides as men tried to approach and get into my car. And I was sitting at a stoplight, and I just said, I'm done. Bye. And I just moved forward. I do have a friend, similar thing happened to. Somebody was standing in front of him. He just drove forward, and the person got run over. He did not stop. He did not check. He just, you know what? I'm not going to become a Reginald Denny.
That's right. I mean, they're putting you in harm's way. We have again, freedom is scary. This is one of my favorite podcasters I watch. He says this over and over. He's an attorney, and he talks about things that are going on. Freedom is scary. Get over it. I mean, it's either you have the freedom to flee from a situation like that, or you live in a state where the laws are going to punish you for that. Which one do you want to live in? I want to live in a world where I am free to protect myself. And if the person is the one standing in the middle of the road, blocking the road illegally, by the way, that's supposed to be illegal. They shouldn't be allowing this to happen. And they are posing themselves as a threat to my person being or whoever, my family might be in the car. I should have every right to hit the gas and get out of there. And if you're standing in the roadways blocking me, whatever happens to you happens to you. Because that's a free society where I have the right to protect me and mine.
And you mentioned the person who's going to be in trouble for it, right? My father was a policeman. I said earlier, he was a policeman for 28 years. And one of the sayings he taught me, I'll never forget, is I would rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6.
That's exactly right. So this kind of goes in talking about Democrats and chaos. Idaho Freedom Foundation posted this. It said, it seems Idaho Democrats are attempting to unleash total chaos, openly urging citizens to obstruct law enforcement officers and shield illegal immigrants. This is the left's official new playbook. Prioritize illegals over the safety of our own citizens. And this was Blaine County Democrats posting, "ICE spotted in Haley, Idaho, do not obey," openly calling on citizens not to obey ICE when they come in to detain and deport illegals. What are your thoughts on that? I think I already know.
Well, I've seen this in several places online lately, the past month, that anybody who is still adhering and clinging to Democrat ideology is basically aligning themselves with Marxism and violent Marxism at that. And I am really aligning myself with that belief. How can you do this? How can you stand against America? I mean, you got a problem with it. America's not evil. It's the people who are in the positions that are evil. So stop saying America's evil. You
Yeah.
need to call out the people. And now we've got laws. ICE follows the laws. I mean, nobody wants to open up their door and let a bunch of people come into their house and live in their living room and not pay and expect you to pay them and feed them and give them health care. Nobody's going to do that. And yet that's exactly what people on the left are saying. And we can have compassion for people. We got this thing turned upside down. We have, I mean, God created the family first, and then the congregation, the synagogue back in the old days, but the church today, and then the government. And there's a whole series of responsibilities for each circle. And so people who are needing help, this is supposed to be the job of love your neighbor as yourself and the church, not the government. That's not the government's job. The government is supposed to defend us, coin money, regulate interstate commerce, blah, 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 blah. It's not supposed to be giving handouts. That's the church's job. And so I'm going to point my finger at the church and say, hey, church, wake up. If you want to make a difference, make a difference. But do it down there. Don't do it. Don't wait for them to come here to do it. That's what mission trips are for.
You know, that's a good point. You know, the government stepped in and they started taking care of the poor, the welfare, which was the church's job. Where in the Bible does it say if the government steps in and starts taking care of the needy, that you are now absolved of your responsibility to do so?
It doesn't. But also to that point, in, I believe it's 1 Samuel, you have Samuel warning the nation of Israel, look, you're asking for a king. You got to realize what the ripple effect of this is. When you ask for a king, this is what you're going to get. And you're not going to like it.
Yep.
So they were warned.
Yep. That's right.
And by the way, I realized I said, that's what mission trips are for. There's a whole bunch of information behind it. I don't want people coming down on me, oh, Bobinski doesn't care, blah, blah. Education is huge in this country. Education is what made our country really, really prosperous.
Yeah.
It's why the government, if we want to say, created the Texas A&M, agriculture and machinery. They land grant universities were created. Here, we're going to give you land. We're going to give you some money to get started because we want you to teach people about agriculture and machinery, because 100 and some odd years ago when that all started, that was the economy.
Yeah.
The A&Ms were all over the place. In fact, up in Moscow, that was our land grant university. In Idaho, every state got one, at least one. So it was, if the government's going to do anything, it's like invest in education, and that's what we should be doing, not bringing everybody here. We should be going there and teaching them how to make things better.
Yes, well, here we go. We're right back around to teaching man how to fish versus fishing for him and handing him a fish.
Right.
And we could go. I'm gonna step on some toes with this one, but I want a nation full of people who are America first and who would give their fortune, who would give their life, who would give everything to defend this country. And when we have people pouring into our country over the borders because that country has failed the people, and the same thing is happening here in Idaho, and I hate to say this because I have some very dear friends who came here from California, but I do have a little bit of concerns when people leave their country that didn't rise up and fix it. And what is that creating now? a nation full of people who are afraid to stand up and defend their own country. And I know that at some points it gets so bad so that another country comes in. There are times when another country comes in, another king outside of your borders, they come in and they take over your country. And they fought and they bled and they died and then they got overwhelmed. And yes, there is room for true asylum seekers.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're not seeking asylum, you just have a crappy situation in your country. And if the people would rise up, they would have the power to overthrow the evil that is happening in your country. You have a responsibility to do so.
And I'm going to go back to circle of concern, circle of control, circle of influence. I see your point, but I also say there are some things that we realize that the ball is rolling too fast and too big for us to stop it, and now it's time to get out of the way.
Yeah, and I do agree with that too. And that is what happens when another nation comes into your country and they take over. But if you let
another ideology, I think California.
Yeah.
I posted something recently,
and there is that.
Politicians in our country and probably around the world, but especially in America, have this unspoken belief that the voters are gullible and easily fooled. And then every election year, the voters prove them true.
Yeah.
Them right.
I talked with Senator Glenita a little bit. I think I touched on this just a little bit, but on Father's Day, we had a great sermon that was on the role of men, and men need to, and a Bible verse that said that men need to be men. And it really got my head spinning on where are the men in our communities with this pride thing. When a business rises up, in our particular area, we would have Glanbia. Across the state, we have Micron. We have St. Luke's. We have all of these businesses, big businesses that are donating to pride. Why peacefully, I'm not advocating for violence, but peacefully, what do you think those businesses would do if, say, 50 to 100, maybe 250 men showed up and went, hey, we'd like to have a word with the owner, president, CEO, manager, whoever it is that just donated to this pride thing. We'd like to have a word with you about that because we disagree with what you're doing to our community. And if the community pressure started coming down on those companies, because what we're talking about is like a 7% minority here that's in this LGBTQ trans community, but yet they are running many states. They're running many communities. They've gotten so big that businesses with this DEI and everything else are scared to death. Fortunately, that's starting to turn around a little bit. But how different would it be if the men that used to get down and hang out at the Elks Lodge or wherever it happened to be that they gathered together still did that and had conversations instead of just getting angry on social media and showed up and actually did something about it and said, we're not going to support you. And we're going to tell everybody what the dirty deeds that you guys are doing. And this will financially destroy you if you don't stop destroying our community by giving to these kinds of ideologies. That's my soapbox moment, but
yeah. And I was going to say this is a topic for a whole other show, but I will say this: you touched on it, and it was fear, being afraid of being labeled as a hater in the community because you hate somebody, and it's like I see throughout my own neighborhood the little little yard signs that say, love. It's like, well, stop taking the word love out of context and out of definition.
Yes.
So, like I said, it's a topic for another show by itself.
It would be, we are to hate the sin, and hating the sin isn't just saying, well, I don't like that. It goes beyond that. It goes to a point where, okay, hate the sin, but then do something about it. Stop allowing the sin in your community. Love the sinner, and you don't go kill them because of the way they're acting. I don't advocate for that at all. And to prevent them from being able to support their families and do that. I don't advocate for that. But on the other side of it, we need to start doing something about sin and speaking out against it.
And let's kind of put a bow on that. Remember Matthew Shepard in Wyoming being killed, and he was gay, and the national narrative quickly became that he was killed because he was gay.
Yeah.
And that was the story. And so all sorts of legislation gets passed. Turns out when the truth finally came out, he was killed by another gay man
Right.
for messing up a drug deal or something like that. And so this is so easy for the fear of being labeled a hater that it causes us to do things in our government, our government elected officials to do things and vote for things that are not morally sound. But the left will use that, and now the truth comes out. The dude was not
Yep.
killed because he was gay.
Yeah, we need to stop letting the media dictate our actions, and we need to start letting God do it.
Yeah.
Next headline.
Are we over time?
Yeah, we got another minute, and this is just the one that I wanted to hit. Kash Patel. FBI has located documents which detail alarming allegations related to the 2020 U.S. election, including allegations of interference by the CCP. I've immediately declassified the material and turned the documents over to the chairman for further review.
I don't believe this. There was not a shred of evidence of false voting.
I thought it would be fun to end this on a little bit of dunking, a little bit of dunking here. That told you so.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. We've been lied to. We've been lied to. We've been lied to. Man.
And then oh no, I can't walk away without talking about this because this is Idaho, and this is very important for the elections coming up. Idaho Supreme Court orders officials to revise abortion ballot initiative language. The real headline here is so there is an initiative that is going to be on the ballot. That's the key point, to try to overturn the progress that we have made in our legislature in Idaho of ending the killing and murdering of small children in the womb. And that's what they are, small children in the womb. They are not a clump of cells, and they are going to be trying to overturn this. And my fear is that they might actually be able to get the votes to do that, because
Go
ahead. Well,
I was going to say that I can guarantee that the overwhelming amount of money spent on that effort is going to come from out-of-state interests. It will not come from Idahoans.
And it's going to have more widespread, and this is the danger here, it's going to have more widespread repercussions because the left is going to show up, and some of them on the right, the middle right that still, for whatever reason, believe that it's okay to murder children, they're going to show up at the polls. And they're not just going to be voting on this issue. They're going to be voting all the way down the ballot.
Sure.
They're going to be voting on who our representatives are. They're going to be voting on top issues. And so this is going to be a critical moment in Idaho for the conservatives to get off their seat and get into the polls and go vote.
Every election.
Yep. So that's coming, guys. That's coming, and you need to be prepared, and you need to be prepared to show up and vote. So start educating yourself right now, because it's the fear of not knowing how you should vote is what keeps most people from voting. So get involved and get educated so you don't have that fear, so you can go in and boldly check the box next to the right person, not just the R next to their name. On that,
every election. Vote every election.
All right, so coming up this Friday, Clint Hostetler, Representative Hostetler, is going to come on and join us here on True Idaho News. So be here for that on Friday. And other than that, get involved and stay strapped, my friends.